Coming into number 10, we have this creepy angel skeleton. Also, it's alongside a really creepy hard-hitting message. Okay, I personally don't know what is creepier, this terrifying as F statue of basically a winged skeleton kissing the face of a stone corpse, or the inscription. The inscription reads, "The blood in his veins grows cold and all strength is gone. Faith has been extolled by his fall into the arms of death. Amen." I understand that for some people death isn't a jovial occasion, but can we maybe just chill out a little bit? This sobering statue can be found at Barcelona's Poblenou Cemetery, where I don't feel like I'm going to be taking a trip anytime soon. No thanks. Scary and really sad at number 9, we have this unidentified gravestone from Oskaloosa. This is in the Oskaloosa Pleasant View Cemetery in the United States. This stone reads, "Unidentified baby girl found in Delaware River, May 1977. That is so horrendously sad. The baby was never identified, and neither her parents or killer, if they were separate people, have ever been found either. Coming into number 8, this next tombstone is pretty much just a fancy way of saying you're next. It reads, "To the person passing by, as you are now, so once was I. As I am now, you soon will be. Prepare yourself and pray for me." Wait. As I am now, you soon will be, but like, Oscar, you're dead. Oh, I see. This tombstone is pretty much just a direct threat telling you that, yeah, you're gonna die. Who even needs words when you could just let the whole horrifying stone itself do the talking? Am I right? Coming into number 7, we have this very, very awake but dead baby. It is always depressingly sad when a baby dies, but is this any way to immortalize them? The baby is sitting bolt upright in a crib while a lamb that may or may not have been some kind of animal sacrifice lays at the foot of the bed. Hi there, cold dead baby stone eyes. Yeah, why are you following me wherever I go? I don't like it. I couldn't be near it. It's too much. Coming into number 6, we have a victim of the beast. If you visit the Salt Lake City Cemetery, you might not want to leave any flowers on Lily E. Grace's grave for fear of the repercussions. It seems like Lily, who died in November 1958, aged 77, was a victim of the beast, or so her gravestone says. They even added a 666 at the end of the inscription just to make it clear which beast she fell foul of. Weirdly, her husband is also buried at the same cemetery, but far away from his wife's corpse. The website WeirdUS.com claims a woman who walked on the grave later had an accident with her car door, which is spooky. I wanted to add something scary but like a little bit more fun at number 5. We have this descriptive cause of death. Back in the day, it was traditional to write a cause of death on a person's tombstone. Poor old George Spencer Millett, who lost his life by essentially being kissed to death, has this for a gravestone. That's right, George was just 15 when he fell foul of an ink eraser stabbing him to death. His tombstone basically does all of the talking and will tell you all about it. He was trying to escape birthday kisses from fellow office workers when he fell on the eraser ink. Weird. Obviously it's sad, but a deep dark part of me just loves this description on his gravestone. Another pretty frank and way less hilarious tombstone at number 4, we have pressed to death. Again, part of the descriptive tombstone category, it seems that Giles Corey was pressed to death, which is a really, really horrible way to go and makes reading his stone, like, really uncomfortable and claustrophobic. It turns out that he was actually murdered as part of the Salem witch trials, which makes his death even spookier. This gravestone can be found at the Charter Street Cemetery in Salem, Massachusetts. We have a murder victim's gravestone at number 3. I think like a murder victim's gravestone is always disconcerting. William Wood was murdered in Derbyshire, England in 1823. Not only that, he was actually pretty brutally murdered. The almost 200-year-old gravestone marks the spot where he was found dead and frankly tells the world that indeed he was murdered. He was here murdered, apparently. This is very chilling, and if you want to find it for yourself, it's between Disley and Whaley Bridge, but personally I wouldn't want to walk down there alone at night. Coming into number 2, putting the head into headstone, we have, I guess, this head in a stone. Ooh. Nothing sends a scarier tombstone message than a physical head in a box. The head belongs to the patron saint of venereal disease. Yes, there is a patron saint of venereal disease, which actually sends an even scarier message. The saint was Saint Vitalis of Assisi, who died in 1370. His name is on the case, but to be honest, I'm much less concerned with what is on the case than I am with what is in it. Finally, at number 1, we have an Ouija board headstone. So you know Ouija boards are used for contacting the dead, right? Well, what better place to do this than in a graveyard where, it's literally filled with dead people. Inventor of this spirit game, Elijah Bond, insisted on an Ouija board headstone for his own grave, which is very terrifying and very creepy. Imagine playing with that thing, absolutely no from me, get me far away from there.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Kate McCormick. This tombstone truly leaves one of the darkest and saddest stories I have ever heard. This stone reads, Kate McCormick, seduced and pregnant by her father's friend, unwed, she died from abortion, her only choice, abandoned in life and death by family. With but a single rose from her mother, buried only through the kindness of unknown benefactors. Died February 1876, age 21, victim of an unforgiving society. Have mercy on us. The story of what happened to Kate is obviously quite clear in the message and is truly an absolute nightmare. A trip to the cemetery is always a bit of a grim experience, but when you see something like this, it really does take it to a new level. All we can do is hope that wherever Kate is now, she is resting in peace and know that we haven't forgotten her or her story. In our number 9 spot today, we have Herman Harband. Herman decided to have a headstone made ahead of time before his death, but didn't even actually end up getting buried there, which is quite interesting. Herman had a message he wanted to get across, however, and he certainly did just that. It's actually a bit of a sad and terrifying story, and it really shows the place Herman was in when he made it. The stone reads, Herman Harband, born in 1918. My wife Eleanor Arthur of Queens, New York, lived like a princess for 20 years, traveling the world with the best of everything. When I went blind, she tried to poison me, took all my money, all my medication, and left me in the dark alone and sick. It's a miracle I escaped. I won't see her in heaven because surely she's going to hell. Herman absolutely went off, but it definitely seems like he kind of had a right to, because that story is simply terrible. Good news is that Herman ended up getting remarried and he lived a happy and very long life until he passed away in 2011. In our number 8 spot today, we have Francis and Mary Huntrudes. This stone is one of the less sad ones on this list today, thankfully, and while still haunting, it's in more of a poetic or beautiful way. Or at least I think so. This tombstone is from Francis and Mary Huntrudes, and their stone tells the story of their lives and their love. It reads about how they were both born on the same day in 1600. They were married on their shared birthday, they had 12 children together, and then they both passed away on their birthdays just shortly after turning 80. That is quite some love story, and honestly, what are the chances? But the final 2 lines of the text on the tombstone really sum up the story so perfectly. They read, each tender heart so fit a match, surely could never be. Both in their lives and in their deaths agree. Maybe this match was simply a serendipitous coincidence, but I definitely would like to think otherwise. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Tazacorte Martyrs Memorial. This one is a little different from the others on this list today for a couple reasons. Firstly, these are tombstones for many individuals, and secondly, because there isn't a message left with them that I want to talk about, but instead just the entire eerie nature of the whole situation. This may appear as a gravesite that has been flooded, but it's actually an underwater memorial. In 1570, a group of Jesuit missionaries boarded a ship from Portugal to Brazil. A French pirate named Jacques Souris boarded the ship along with them, and from there, he and his men took the lives of all of the priests. Some of them even had their limbs cut off before they were thrown overboard. The lone survivor of this day was the ship's cook. The memorial features 40 crosses for each of the lives lost, and it is located near the area of the massacre, which is close to La Palma Island, 18 meters below the surface. I might be alone in this belief, but I think that there is just something extremely haunting about an underwater memorial. In our number 6 spot today, we have Jeremy Bibb Balasag. This tombstone goes hand in hand with an absolutely insane story about Jerry's life. The short of it is that Jerry, who is a professional wrestler, ended up vanishing after getting in trouble with the law. He was wanted for charges of fraud, and while no one knew his whereabouts for 6 months, when his mother picked up a magazine one day which featured the victims of the horrible cultist Jonestown massacre, she sadly saw her son's picture alongside all of the others. This led to there being a tombstone, of course, made for Jerry, although his body body would have been already buried in California. So, this all happened in 1978, but let's flash forward to 1990. In that year, a man named Ricky A. Weta was arrested for attempting to take someone's life. He was fingerprinted upon his arrest, and who would have thought, Ricky turned out to be none other than the presumed dead Jerry. This whole story was of course huge national news because how could this have possibly happened? In the end, Jerry was caught and brought to justice a few separate times before he passed away in a prison in Nicaragua from a heart attack that was brought on by the heat in the prison, which is a whole separate issue we'll have to save for another video. In our number 5 spot today, we have Martha Jane Mary McCune. Mary's tombstone tells the tale of her final days, and it truly feels like it is something out of a horror movie. Mary was born around 1838 and passed away most definitely not long enough after in 1855. She was pregnant at the time, and the writing on her tombstone really says it all, so I might as well just read it to you. Bitten by rabid coyote, developed rabies, became violent, was smothered with feather bed. Apparently at the time of being bit by this coyote, Mary's husband was out of town for work, and by the time he got back, his wife had already passed away and been buried, and he had absolutely no idea that any of this was happening, which is extremely tragic. It was so horrible that this was the way that Mary's life was taken, and it definitely makes you grateful for modern medicine, although rabies still manages to claim the lives of around 59,000 people per year. In our number 4 spot today, we have Mona Harold Vanny. This tombstone reads as a letter written to Mona from her children, but it certainly is not what you'd be expecting. Instead of the nice and lovely message you might think, Mona's 3 children detail what an absolute nightmare she was to them growing up. The stone reads, "To our mother. You spent your life expressing animosity for nearly every person you encountered, including your children. Within hours of his death, you even managed to declare your husband of 57 years an unsuited spouse or father. Hopefully you are now insulated from all of the dissatisfaction you found in human relationships." Wow, they really did not hold back one little bit. If it makes you feel better, the message that was left on their father's stone was much more kind and loving. I guess one thing is clear, and that is that Buddy, Jackie, and Mike were not messing around. In our number 3 spot today, we have Charles H. Salmon. Charles' tombstone tells the story of a medical malpractice that ended up leading to his death. Basically what happened is that Charles fell ill with a cold and was given medicine to help treat it. Little did he know, but he wasn't given the proper medicine, but was instead given morphine. When he went back to the doctor to explain that he wasn't getting any better, they also gave him morphine, and this caused him to end up overdosing on the drug. It truly is not quite clear how this could have possibly happened, and I'm not sure if Charles' family ever saw any form of justice for this terrible mistake, but it really is just such an awful story. In our number 2 spot today, we have Andrew J. Olsak. Andrew's tombstone is really straight to the point, but it is one of the saddest we have on today's list. His stone reads, "Abandoned in old age by wife and children. May God be more understanding and merciful." There really is a lot to unpack here. First, I have so many questions as to what happened and what led to this abandonment. Second, I have to know if this is his way of sticking it to his family who he claims abandoned him, or if this is more of just a simple goodbye. Either way, whatever the details are behind this story, coming upon this message in a graveyard would certainly make your heart sink a bit, and definitely be one of those things that you just remember. In our number 1 spot today, we have Leo Matlovich. Leo's tombstone is one that is certainly not easily forgotten. This stone doesn't even say his name, but the reason for that will become quite clear. First, we have to tell Leo's story. Leo was a war hero in the Air Force, and he challenged the policy of homosexuality in the military. Through Leo's bravery and activism, he was able to actually change a few things for gay people serving in the military, the effects of which can still be seen today. Despite Leo receiving both a Bronze Star and a Purple Heart for his service, in the end he was still discharged for being a gay man. He ended up passing away in San Francisco in 1988 after complications from HIV/AIDS. His tombstone reads, "A gay Vietnam veteran. While I was in the military, they gave me a medal for killing 2 men and a discharge for loving one." There is nothing I could possibly say that would be more profound than that, so I'll just end off this point by saying Leo and all the things he did and fought for will truly never be forgotten.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Giles Corey. Out of the 27 people who had their lives taken away from them during the 1692 Salem witch trials, 19 were hanged, 7 passed away in prison while serving their sentence, and the last victim was Giles Corey. He refused to plead either innocent or guilty, and the law at the time states you can't be tried otherwise. So what they did next was unimaginable. As his tombstone hints towards, Giles Corey was pressed to death. The townsfolk laid a heavy board on top of the 81-year-old man, and then over the course of 2 days, boulders were slowly added, making the weight more and more unbearable. They were hoping that Giles would admit something, either innocent or guilty, but every time they asked him anything, Giles responded with, "More weight." Yeah, how epic is that? Extremely brave. But sadly, after 2 days of this torture, Giles Corey passed away. He fought for so long and did what he did because if he had gone either of the other 2 ways, Giles would have had his property taken away by the town. But since he passed away, not admitting guilt, he was still in full possession of his estate, which immediately went to his son-in-law. Yep, Salem witch trials. Not the craziest thing that was happening on this list, to be honest with you. Salem witch trials were, yeah, horrible. Pretty horrible thing to look back on right off the bat. Number 9, Ellen Shannon. Heading over to the late 1800s for this one, and I gotta warn you, this one is pretty dark. In 1870, we obviously didn't have the same safety requirements as we do today, like at all. For example, if you wanted to read before bed, you didn't have a Kindle back in the day, you didn't have an iPad, you didn't even have a nightlight, but you did have a kerosene lamp. Ellen had used R.E. Danforth's non-explosive burning fluid, and well, dare I say it, the obvious happened. Her tomb in Pennsylvania reads in memory of Ellen Shannon, aged 26 years, who was fatally burned March 21, 1870, by the explosion of a lamp filled with R.E. Danforth's non-explosive burning fluid. Yes, that's what it actually says. And it's a tragedy. That's a horrible way to go out, don't get me wrong. But I admire that the family boldly put R.E. Danforth publicly as the cause of death here. She put him on blast. Number 8, victim of the beast. Lily E. Gray was buried in Salt Lake City Cemetery back in 1958. This one is quite recent as far as tombstones go. This one is the most common looking as well. It's not monumental. I'm sure many have missed it in time. The message written on the stone back in 1958 says, Lily E. Gray, June 6, 1881 to November 14th, 1958. Victim of the beast, 666. Now see, if that 666 wasn't there, I would be like, oh, maybe she was attacked by an animal, maybe like the beast was a natural phenomenon, like, you know, a surfing term for a large wave, or like a risky mountain trail, something like that. The 666 makes it quite specific on who they're referring to here, so that's pretty haunting. The beast sounds like something sinister, something from the underworld. In the book of Revelation, the beast is literally the Antichrist. Not sure what happened here, but the area was also known to have followers of Aleister Crowley. Crowley also referred to himself as the Beast 666. It sounds like an old Hotmail when you add numbers, doesn't it? The Beast 666. Add me. Number 7, the Ouija board. The fact that you can just buy a Ouija board from a Toys R Us now is hilarious to me. That's so creepy. They have glow-in-the-dark Ouija boards. Yeah, just in case the lights go out and you still want to communicate with the dead. And, you know, glow in the dark is fun. It's like people want to get possessed nowadays, right? Where did all this Ouija board madness start? Well, it began with Elijah Bond. Bond was the first person to ever patent the Ouija board, which is a scary feat in itself. A lot of questions already. But when he was buried, he was laid to rest in an unmarked grave. Now that was back in 1921, mind you, and it wasn't until 2007 until his resting place got an upgrade. A man named Robert Merck found his spot, raised money to get him a tombstone, and of course, it had to be a Ouija board. Yeah, if you have any words you want to say, any fan questions, bring your own easel, go ask away. Number 6, specimens. Specimens, yeah, not very large either. This one is a very small tombstone. This one is found in a cemetery near an Ohio asylum. There's actually 2 of these headstones. Both of them say specimens. Again, specimens, just that's it. The fact that these stones are the size of a shoebox also makes it even more chilling. This psychiatric facility was the first state-supported asylum in the US. Its history was dark in the early experimental treatment days, so perhaps these headstones could be body parts. You knew I was gonna say that. It's bad. It's all bad. The list gets worse, dare I say. Only halfway. Number 5, Midnight Mary. Mary E. Hart, more commonly referred to as Midnight Mary, had to be featured on this list. Back in 1872 in New Haven, Connecticut, Mary was supposedly buried alive. Yeah, accidentally. It wasn't anything horrible, although this is a pretty dark thing. It wasn't worse. Her stone has a lot of information, all things considered. The massive slab of pink stone reads, at high noon, just from and about to renew her daily work, in her full strength and body and mind, Mary E. Hart, having fallen prostrate, remained unconscious until she died at midnight, October 15th, 1872. Born December 16th, 1824. And then right underneath, there's one line that reads, the people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away. Again, you had us in in the first half. The back 9 gets a little scary. Now, many have noted that this phrase is from the Old Testament, but tales of her being buried alive suggest that there might be a midnight curse hanging about this area. So if you live in this area, you now have a curfew. There you go. You have a curfew now. Go home. Number 4, Mary Jane McCune. Some of the details in this one I can't even talk about here on the Tube of You. It's really dark, really, really dark. Mary Jane McCune was the wife of one James Farrar. She was born in 1838 and passed away later in 1855. Quite young. Now, with many of these tombstones, they can be pretty sparse with details, like specimens, for example. Or you can explain as much as you can in that one block, spread awareness to the public. Like, any lamp mishaps. Both can be haunting to read. Underneath Mary Jane's name and dates is a message on how she passed away. Mary Jane was bitten by a rabid coyote, developed rabies, became violent, and was smothered with feather bed. Wild. The story even recalls that the husband James was away for work at the time and found out what happened only when he got back. That is so tragic. That's the thing with these old resting places. They have tons of information because, well, that was it. That was your legacy. Literally written in stone. It's like so many characters or less to explain how you died horribly. Number 3, Eugene. Humans are odd, okay? Before we get into these last few, the ancient tombstone curses, first we have to look back to 1929 and how not to preserve a mummy. Yeah, let's do it. 1929, Ohio, a corpse just appeared on the road out of nowhere. We love those. There was even an address found on this man's body, but it was an empty plot of land once they followed through. They had no name for this body, so they named him Eugene. Yeah, they named him after a local neighbor. Yeah, hey, we're gonna name this dead guy after you. Is that cool, Eugene? No? Well, too late. They used this body as an attraction. They gave it the mummy treatment, which in Ohio 1929 probably wasn't the best way, but they did it. And then 25 years later, when more and more people started asking about this Ohio mummy, they laid the man to rest. Finally, they officially buried him in 1964. So now when you see this grave, it says, Eugene, found dead in 1929, buried 1964. I bet so many people are confused if they saw this. Send them this video and then type, "You won't believe number 3." They're like, what, do you work for MA? What is this guy doing? Why did he tell me to press the thumbs up? Who is this? Number 2, ancient tomb curse. Ancient Egyptian tombs are beautiful. Even after this many years, they're well preserved. Ancient Egyptians believed that false doors were a connection to the dead, and that's how spirits were able to travel here and there. Most false doors can be found in the west wall because Egyptians believed that the west was the land of the dead. The walls of ancient Egyptian tombs are also full of jewelry, art, clothing, basically anything valuable you may need in the afterlife to impress the gods. You're offering up your finest treasures, but with that comes a warning from these gods. One warning trespassers that the gods will wring their neck like that of a goose if you were to steal anything that wasn't yours in these tombs. Inside the found tomb of Ankh-Mahor, for example, who was a pharaoh official 4,000 years ago, inside their tomb a curse was left over. He was buried in Mastaba in an above ground massive tomb, and left on the wall was this warning: "Might do against this, my tomb, the same shall be done to your property." And then it continues to warn trespassers of Ankh-Mahor's knowledge of secret spells and magic, and threatens to fill impure intruders with a fear of seeing ghosts. Yeah, I think that ought to do the trick. Yeah, no way I'm messing with an ancient magician pharaoh. I'm good. I'm definitely all good. And finally, number 1, KV55. Yeah, we'll end this list on an ancient Egyptian tomb, with perhaps the most chilling message left over of all time. This tomb was found, of course, in the Valley of the Kings by Edward Ayrton back in 1907. It was discovered right next to King Tut's tomb. This was a big deal. But the reason we referred to this tomb by a number rather than a name is because, well, we still have no idea who it was made for. Even the walls of the tomb inside, they aren't covered with any hieroglyphs, no artwork, no fake doors. There isn't any clothing laying around, there's no jewelry, it's just bare, which is extremely odd given what I just told you. As you walk down the 20 steps towards KV55, you'll notice only a few markings on the entrance, markings that show that the entrance was widened since it was first cut, along with the ceiling being raised higher. So adjustments were made at some point, meaning this was not a forgotten project by any means, which makes it creepier. The only hint as to who or what is buried remains on the wall, and it's one hieroglyph. That hieroglyph translates to, "The evil one shall not live again." Yeah, I sure hope not. I've seen The Mummy, and I really hope not. I'm all set. Cheers on that one.
Blink and you'll miss it, but if you look closely, you'll see that our number 10 was murdered by human wolves. 1. Any gravestone outlining murder freaks me out, and 2. What the actual F are human wolves? So I was thinking that maybe it was something along the lines of werewolves. Now this is something that it seems that the residents of Conemaugh, Oklahoma, where you can find the grave, think. In fact, the grave has been subject to many an urban legend. The official story of the gravestone of Catherine Cross is that she had an illegal abortion and died. Her devastated parents considered her body to have been torn to shreds by a bad doctor, or wolf. Another terrifying murder tombstone, we have the headstone of Princess Doe at number 9. The body of a teenager was found at Cedar Ridge Cemetery along Route 94 in New Jersey in 1982. The girl was thought to be between 14 and 18 years old, and her cause of death was blunt force trauma. While her face was not recognizable, it was clear that the girl came from a reasonably affluent background. Despite that, nobody in the area reported a teen as missing. Her gravestone is sad and scary in equal parts. It reads, Princess Doe, missing from home, dead amongst strangers, remembered by all, born, ? Found July 15th, 1982. Now the stone is a living reminder that her killer, or indeed killers, are still out there. A spooky death rhyme makes these gravestones even spookier at number 8. This headstone reads, It does my heart a world of good to see you in a box of wood, aka a coffin. Now the owner of their headstone wants you to die, and that, yeah, it freaks me out, I can't lie. That or the person who organised the grave is confessing to murder, which also isn't great. Chill out though guys, it turns out this headstone is just a Halloween decoration. I should have known because I did see the creepy cobwebs in the background and it was just too good to be true. Coming into number 7, we have Baby Monster. I feel like I could be a good baby monster. I feel like this image was in our thumbnail for part 1, but I didn't include it in the actual video, so let's talk about this somewhat terrifying and cryptic baby monster tombstone. It seems that this tiny devil lived for just over 3 months and somehow managed to garner a bit of a rep in its short time on Earth. In actuality, whilst this does seem like the final resting place of a wee beastie, it seems that actually the tombstone can be found at the Saar Pioneer Cemetery in Washington. The story is that the child's surname was actually Monster, which is a bit unfortunate. I don't know, I could get on board with being called Rebecca Monster actually, it might be better than Rebecca Felgate. I shall henceforth be known as Rebecca Monster. This grave tells a horrible story at number 6. So here the tombstone reads, Eugene, found dead in 1929, buried 1964. So like, wait, if Eugene's body was found in 1929, what exactly was going on with it for 35 years? Well sadly, Eugene was a black man found dead by the side of the road in Ohio at a time when black human rights were not equally considered or treated with much respect. It seems that poor Eugene was then embalmed and put on display at the Littleton Funeral Home, where he became somewhat of a tourist attraction. I mean, how sad is that? Eventually in the mid-60s, he was finally laid to rest. Now if anyone's gonna haunt their grave, I would imagine it would be Eugene. Sometimes actions speak louder than words, and this grave is giving off one pretty scary physical message at number 5. Yeah, so this is George's Rodenbach's grave. Sometimes people are dead and buried, but George's seems to be suggesting that he is otherwise. Just look at him, climbing out of his grave like the creep that he is. Imagine being alone in that graveyard at night and seeing old George's tombstone, like yikes. Stay dead, Georges, get back in there, your time is done. So with some of these tombstones we've done a little bit of digging to find out the story behind them, but no need with this absolute shocker at number 4, as basically the full story is laid out for us pretty damn clearly and oh my god, it's terrifying. Wondering how Mary Jane McCoon died? Just consult her headstone for further detail. So, as it reads, she was bitten by a rabid coyote, developed rabies, became violent, was smothered with a feather bed. When her husband returned, she and her unborn child were dead and buried. Like, TMI gravestone, you could just say loving mother, happy wife. I feel like maybe they were just kind of frank in the 1850s. Also, poor rabid pregnant Mary was only 17 when she died by the looks of things, which is really sad. Up next at number 3, we have the sad headstone of Ironfoot Eva. It seems that Eva was a 300-pound giantess and sideshow performer. Her tombstone can be found at Old Trappers Lodge in California, and it's scary for 2 reasons. 1, the cold dead eyes of her statue, and 2, the fact that the inscription suggests that she was murdered. It reads, Ironfoot Eva, 1800 to 1830, 300-pound giantess, poetess, singer and blacksmith, killed on her wedding day by unknown riflemen. Well, there's that. Ooh, very very sad at number 2, we simply have specimens. This tombstone sends a pretty distinct and horrifyingly clinical message. Found in a mental health hospital cemetery in Columbus, Ohio, there are actually a pair of gravestones marked as simply specimens. What remains and who they belong to, we don't know. I'd feel pretty creeped out if I saw these tombstones for myself. It's largely suspected that the so-called specimens are the mutilated remains of bodies used for dissection. Like, call them by their name. So finally, this is the scariest headstone that I have ever seen at number 1. Now a lot of these stones have told stories, but this one is enacting the murder scene. This just makes me so sad. We have Italino Lacamelli's gravestone. Italino was just a boy of 5 years old when he was murdered in 1925. He was happily in the garden playing with his hoop when he was murdered in broad daylight by a madman. His grave shows the moments before he dies, a happy boy with a hoop just doing his thing, but then he's chased by the scary hands of a killer coming to drag him into the underworld. Oh my god, like, I'm not okay. So guys, I'm pretty freaked out by this list.